Welcome to Three Beers IT, a home for disinhibited conversations about the world of IT. The things that maybe don't get said until folks are on their third beer, or cocktail, or glass of wine, or, as always, Three Beers IT urges listeners of legal drinking age to drink responsibly and to not spill. It shorts out the equipment and it stinks up the HVAC. So today, we're talking about networks, network automation, and AI ops. I'm John Burke, CTO at Nemertes, coming up on 17 years here as an analyst, and before that, 18 years an IT guy who did everything from writing software to managing network and data center teams to enterprise architecture. Today, I'm drinking a Lonely Blonde from Fulton Brewing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's a nice, smooth beer. It's well suited to a hot day in Minnesota, and that's what we got today. Joining me is David Siegel, who runs the Siegel Group, a company focused on transformative network projects. Dave, would you mind introducing yourself a little further?
Sure. I've been in the internet business for coming up on 30 years here. Started Siegel Group after a 20-year run with Global Crossing, Level 3, and CenturyLink.
Okay.
And both a little bit engineering with that business and have on the product management side. And now I do a lot of engineering work, business planning, network strategy work, and in some cases some marketing work for a variety of clients in the field. A lot of which are carriers, networks, cloud providers, and even some software companies.
Impressive. And thank you very much for joining us today. I think I have not had a serious conversation about IT in the last 6 months at least without discussing automation at some point, and especially networking automation. So as a starting position, can we agree that there needs to be a lot more of it?
Oh, yeah. But before we get into anything serious like that, I have to pour myself a drink.
Please do. What do you got in mind?
Well, I've got a nice selection from the Isle of Islay over here. So I've got a 5-year-old Ardbeg called Wee Beastie. I've got a sherry cask Kilchoman, a 18-year Bunnahabhain, an Octomore from the Burke distillery, and the 16-year Lagavulin, which is a standard pretty much.
Well, that's a fantastic selection you got there. The Bunnahabhain's my favorite, actually. That's a fantastic whiskey.
It's a fantastic whiskey, very smooth. The 18-year, the peat is very subtle. It's not overwhelming, particularly for people that say they don't like peaty scotches. It's a nice gateway drug into the peaty. But I don't know if you've tried some of the other whiskeys that they have, but they have I can't remember. I can't even pronounce the names. It's called a Tuitechada or something like that, and it's a wonderful peaty scotch compared to the rest of their lineup. I'm going to do the Kilchoman sherry cask, which is
that's not one I know.
It's quite peaty, but the sherry gives it a nice sweet finish as well. So it's peaty and sweet at the same time. Very nice.
Cheers.
So yeah, the problem with networks and IT systems is, as squirrely as systems can be, the biggest problem is actually people.
Well, of course,
the people break things more than the equipment breaks themselves. Most outages are human caused. So yeah, there's not enough automation out there. There are cases where the automation causes the outage. Like I remember last year, Facebook had a huge outage that was caused by their automation system, something that ties their monitoring systems into their DNS platform, and it went completely haywire and screwed their whole system. But imagine the complexity that the hyperscalers have with millions of servers, and it's not something a team or even a group of teams can manage effectively. And they all have the foresight to realize that, and they built automation in the beginning. Unfortunately, the standard enterprise organization doesn't have access to the kinds of programmers that Google does to write all that automation. So, and if you look to the market in the industry, there are toolkits and platforms that you can get, but there just isn't out of the box stuff. And then even when you try and implement that stuff, you get hampered by poor records, right? That's the number one problem. You can't have a cohesive automation platform if your inventory is in 5 different places or if it's incomplete. So that's usually
incorrect.
or incorrect. I mean, cleansing data is a very large job. So that's usually what enterprises stumble on when they try to get big into automation, is they end up having years of cleanup work to do on their inventory system, just so that they have everything laid out that they can actually build reliable automation to.
And if you want to lean on a discovery tool instead to find out what's on your network and try and make it all dynamic, that introduces a different set of problems to the equation. But with more needed, I always wind up thinking about IT's ongoing love-hate relationship with automation in general, which is always, we're in it because we're thrilled by technology and we love new things and we love smart things and automation's cool. But at the same time, we've all lived our own version of the Sorcerer's Apprentice at some point in our experiments or production use of automation. We've all put the wrong thing in or seen somebody else put the wrong thing in and then hit go and watched the wrong thing happen, thousands of times in the first few seconds. All those home directories for your users, not renamed into an archival tree, but deleted, something like that, and needing to be restored from backup before they can be archived. So there's this deep culture in IT of both wanting to automate more and fearing to automate more. I think one of the most powerful things that vendors bring to the table is the kind of automation that they can hide from us, where we just say what we want to have happen and we don't have to deal at all with the mechanisms that make it happen. And in networking, I'd say SD-WAN is probably one of the most recent examples of something where the vendors have really tried to submerge as much of the automation as they can, to the point where folks don't sometimes think of it as an automation platform. Have you had much experience rolling that out into environments, and how's that worked on the automation front?
Well, I mean, from what I've seen at clients, the automation happens in pockets, and they try and use Pareto analysis to focus on the stuff that hits them the fastest. And like you're alluding to, dealing with failure modes is where you spend the most time, because stuff always breaks. And some of our clients, we've seen them have good luck with Ansible for networking gear, but it doesn't automate everything end to end. It's still, they have workflow systems that sit outside. They have repetitive tasks, and they've figured out how to automate some of those regular tasks, usually around provisioning, for example, provisioning new ports, internal ports for servers or what have you, lighting things up for buildings and configuring departments. Some of those stuff, and it's low-lying fruit. But I haven't seen any enterprise clients on my side that have managed to get end-to-end comprehensive, all in one place kind of automation. I do see some of them starting to turn to some of the AI ops tools that are out there. And what they're hoping to get from AI ops is to kind of deal with the different silos of monitoring platforms that they have. They have, and sometimes those silos are even like across one type of thing. Like they might have 3 different monitoring systems that are all monitoring virtual machines, but they're monitoring different departments, different applications, different internal customers. And then there's a completely separate network team. Maybe there's a content platform involved as well. And there's relationships between all these things when an outage happens, but each team's got their own tool, and maybe they're all sitting in one Teams meeting or one Slack channel posting graphs, all from completely different tools. Hey, look what I found. Somebody else trying to figure out how to read that chart and compare it to the chart that they're looking at. So the ability to kind of suck in all the data, have it be normalized and in a consistent interfaces is the opportunity that a lot of AI ops platforms are tackling right now, to be able to provide correlation across different pieces of the network, different monitoring systems. So you can have one group that likes to use Zabbix, right? And another group likes to use Libre NMS. Another group likes to use SolarWinds. And you can tap into all those systems and kind of bring them into a single pane of glass, which helps to solve some of those silos that have popped up over time.
And unfortunately, they don't often have any kind of unified platform on the other side that would let them address problems as they came up or got discovered. There's no single place they could trigger action based on something that unified view of what's happening has provided them.
Of course. I mean, because there's no one size fits all automation platform, depending on what you're trying to do.
You start to see folks trying to put themselves into that spot, the sort of orchestration platforms, or I don't know, somebody like Itential, where, they're happy to be wagging a bunch of other dogs based on the triggering information that comes into them. They want you to be in charge of it in one place, even though the rubber is hitting the road in a bunch of different places. There are lots of cars involved. Mm-hmm. So that's heartening to see that kind of progress happening, and to see more tools taking a cross-platform, cross-environment perspective. And I think like AI ops as a space is really shining a good bright light on that need and how difficult the problem is.
Yeah. I mean, all those platforms are still very nascent. They do certain things well enough and other things not well at all. I mean, they're good at showing you things that happen in exactly the same time window. But they're not telling you exactly what the problem is. They might tell you, a configuration change also happened at the same time. And that lets you go and look at the configuration change. And you could, launch a playbook to go and back out the configuration change if it's linked up with your automation platform, right? You could have Ansible go and back that out if you've done the work to link all those pieces up. Or, if it's something simple like the VM's out of memory, you could have StackStorm go and reprovision the VM. But it's still kind of up to the end user to look at the data. They're able to detect problems faster. They're able to identify what the problem is faster, but there's still a human there, right?
Hey, buddy.
I know you said you wanted a quiet environment, but there are certain things that you can't control.
Dogs bark, and we don't worry about it.
Yeah.
No fear at all. So you're saying there's still a human there?
There's still a human there that has to decide what action to take to correct the problem, right? There's not an AI there that's processing all the information and recommending the solution that you take in order to solve it. So it's not not replacing humans anytime soon, but it is enabling people to find that problem faster, which is really helpful.
It's massively useful. I mean, time being the most limited resource in most IT departments, scarcer even than money in most places now. It's astonishing how much mileage you can get out of just that kind of leverage. But of course, the dream is to have the system take action automatically on your behalf. You've told it in some important way what you want to have happening. And if it can figure out what's wrong, it should also be able to fix it for you. If somebody
we're
came
a long
to
ways
you,
away from that.
Yeah, well, if somebody came to you next week and said, "Hey, we've got a system that can do this," and you tried it out in your test lab and it seemed to work okay, would you feel at all confident putting that out in production at this point, or would you still want it to put a screen in front of you that says, hey, we think you should press this big red button here to make this 6 things happen, and then wait for you to press the button.
I think you would always deploy it that way first. You would never take the risk of just handing the keys to your job over to to an automation platform like that.
I've had the give me the big red button to push conversation with lots of vendors over the years, and they're so focused on the end goal, which is automated action, that they miss the fact that they've got to convince you over time that the automated action is going to be correct, and that the intermediate between showing you alerts and taking action automatically is telling you what the big red button is going to do and giving you the big red button.
I think it's an interesting cycle too, because part of the problem is information overload. There's so many different pieces of data in different formats that are all accessible to you to help you troubleshoot a problem. If you've gone on a mission to try and enable as many of those data feeds as you can, you end up with too much for a person to handle. So you want to introduce something with machine learning capabilities that can try and make sense of all this different data. But even in the deployments that I've seen, now that there's a machine that can handle all the data that's coming in, there actually still isn't enough data in the system for something to always spot exactly what caused the problem, right? There's always some missing data. Either there's not enough of syslog data coming in with different logging facilities to give you the view, or you haven't integrated this one part of the system into your data flow. You find people that they've deployed S&P metrics, but they really don't have anything for logging, which kind of boggles the mind. Or they don't have synthetic testing across the network. They don't have an agent deployed like a Thousand Eyes or something like that that's able to actually do some end-to-end testing as well as segment testing, or they're not doing protocol monitoring. Right? There's so many tools you could deploy. A lot of times you put these machine learning tools in, and you find that you're getting much better insights than you had before, but you're still not getting the complete picture. And so you have to start enabling more data sources, which actually, when you're doing machine learning, makes the whole system 1,000 times better.
Yep.
Because
more data,
those systems feed off of increased data sets and are able to when they got more angles, they can correlate more and do it faster and better. So I think that's what we would find is as people start down this road, that they figure out that they need to feed their machine learning engine, which is hungry for data, with even more data sources and set that up. A lot of people have, custom inventories that are built on the back end. So figuring out how to transform that data before it ends up in your machine learning system is also a really important part of the process. It's data prep, right? It's that piece is a lot of people underestimate that they have to. It's not even, we're not even talking about cleansing data to make sure it's accurate, but it's about supplementing the data coming in with additional databases, so that when it hits the database, the engine actually has context to compare it to other things. We're talking about like way beyond like even DNS names, right? We're talking about like with one customer, they have they're really heavy multicast environment, and so they have all these different multicast groups that are all feeding all different kinds of channels, and they have an Excel spreadsheet that shows, okay, well, this multicast group number is actually this channel. This is CBS, right? So figuring out how to really get value out of that involves like, well, if I'm putting all this into this engine, I need to also import this custom database so that like now I'm actually getting mappings and I'm getting real names.
And that's an aspect of tools production that, again, I've been having that conversation with management vendors for the whole 17 years that I've been here, honestly, or 16 and a half, that the more I have to manually enter data to make sense of the information you're showing me, to map, the more I manually have to map meaningful human level stuff like that CBS to the low level stuff that these monitoring tools are showing me. That's the exact degree to which your value proposition is decreasing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be able to pull that from sources where I've already got it tucked away in a file somewhere. You need to be able to import and integrate.
Yeah.
And it seems like the AI ops folks get that.
They do.
They're
The enterprise folks also need to catch on. I mean, they know they've got to work with custom databases, and some of the companies got some tools to integrate that.
Mm-hmm.
There's also tools that are available in the open source platforms that these companies are already using, like Kafka. They're already feeding everything into Kafka, but they're not using any of the translation mechanisms inside Kafka to enrich that data when it hits Kafka before somebody else picks it up. And those would be easy ways to add value without even needing to rely on an external AI ops platform. So, that's the nature of tools. A lot of times you aren't taking full advantage of the stuff you already have.
A lot of times, I'd say nearly every time, if not actual shelfware, then shelf features are pretty much unavoidable. And lay on to that the overlap in features where you're getting the same thing in 4 different packages and maybe not using it in any of them.
Right.
And you've got another just long-standing challenge for IT folks, and a tough one. So let me see. Oh my gosh, it's about time. It's about time to wrap up.
Wow.
I guess my closing thought would be, my joke sometimes is AI doesn't always make things better, but it definitely always makes it more expensive. But I'd say with network management, we're actually in a spot in the market right now where AI actually does make it better. It won't always do everything that the hype would lead you to want it, or the initial sales pitch might incline you to believe it would do, but it will do a lot for you, and it will save you a lot of time if you use it correctly.
The business case is really strong for it. It's a very strong business case. The tools are really not that expensive compared to some of the platforms that we're used to. And the value that they provide in terms of helping you to find and solve problems faster is it's apparent. I mean, we're talking about finding the problems, finding root cause 90% to 90% faster than before. And these days, when you can't find people that have the skills to do this stuff, I mean, that in and of itself, I mean, for the cost of hiring 2 senior network engineers, you can get a platform that helps you save. It depends on how big you are as to whether or not that kind of price tag makes sense. But for a lot of companies, it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And the ROI is a lot shorter than most people realize if they've got a network that generates this kind of volume of issues. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that really is about all we have time for. So, Dave, thanks so much for joining me today. I will probably ask you back another time to talk about something else. And in the meantime,
awesome.
Thanks to everybody else for watching or listening in. And until next time, I'm John Burke, and this has been 3 Beers IT.